Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Major Jack Danner of the United States Marine Corps pilot, and has quite a story to tell. So I'll turn it over to you, Jack. And then when you got back, now you're in the Marines. Are you in the regulars? Are you reserve?
No, I was just reserve.
In reserve,
and I wasn't sure I wanted to be a regular. I would have liked to have been, but I wanted to get my college. So I got out, went back to college, and I joined the reserve squadron while I was in college. And I was flying Corsairs and F6s. I could fly as much as I wanted, and I flew practically every day when I was in college.
And what college did you go back to?
Ohio State.
Ohio State?
Columbus, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I arranged my schedule so that I had practically every afternoon off. And flew.
That was great.
Yep.
So you would, when you went there, were you carrying a full credit? What was you carrying, 15 hours or 6?
Oh, full credit.
Full credit, and you were getting every afternoon off, and you had this Corsair, and you had a F6 that you could go fly out.
Fly either one.
Oh, for God's sake, to stay current.
I used to fly my laundry home on a weekend.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, of course there. Yeah.
Well, isn't that neat?
That was a great life, I'll tell you.
Well, I see over your left shoulder here is the one you're talking about. Both the F6 and the Corsair. And you must have fallen in love with the Corsair.
Oh, and I did.
And the 6. The F6 was...
Oh, I liked the 6. That was both of them were very nice.
Smooth and hot.
But I think I preferred the Corsair.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, that was a real Marine Corps airplane.
Definitely.
Yeah. What did the fellow pilots all think of that? They liked it as an assigned airplane?
Everyone liked the Corsair that flew it, I'm sure.
Okay, now you're in college, and what year? This is probably 1947, 40.
This was 46.
46, 47.
Yeah. I guess I right at the end of 46.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated in 49.
49. Okay. And then you went. Then what did you do? Did you?
I went to work with Shell Oil.
Work with Shell Oil.
Yeah, in Ohio and neighboring states there.
And you stayed in the reserve all this time?
Yes.
And kept flying and training?
Kept flying.
Yeah. Now, what did you do with Shell? Were you a pilot for them?
No. I was aiming for the aviation section.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I was in something called Executive Training Program.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for about a year and a half or something like that. And then boom, the Korean War started. And,
now
we weren't sure what was going to happen there, but we had a pretty good idea that we might be going into it.
You bet.
Yeah, and of course, in 1951, we were called in.
Uh-huh. And you're in the reserve now, and your unit went as a unit, or did you get called in as an individual pilot?
No, the whole squadron.
The whole squadron.
Quite a number of reserve squadrons get called in.
Called to active duty.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, gee, now we're getting interesting. You got the fighter of your choice, and what kind of an airplane were you in a squadron of this?
Well, strangely enough, I ended up in a photo squadron down at Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to be in the photo squadron, but that's what they said I was going to be. And we had Corsairs, F4U 5s, which is the latest version of the Corsair, and F7Fs.
F7F?
Yeah. I wanted to fly the F7F because I hadn't flown that before.
Yeah. That was really a night fighter, the F7.
No, it was designed originally as a day fighter, but it came out too late for World War II service.
Mm-hmm.
The Marines had most of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, God, you must have loved that F7.
Oh, I did. Yeah, particularly the photo version because it had no guns and no armor plate.
High speed.
It was the fastest one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to be a photo pilot. But I went over to Korea as a photo pilot. But I figured I could get out of that when I got there, and I did.
Well, that's interesting. Go ahead. Now, how did you go to Korea? By board ship, or did you take
flew all the way.
Flew to Korea. Yeah. And where's that? You went to Tokyo, probably, or Japan?
Yeah, stopped in Japan, of course, for several days, and then on into Korea.
And into Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what? This is really gets interesting. Now you got a fighter, a high-speed fighter in Korea, and Are you in a squadron again? How many planes did you have?
Well, strangely enough, the photo squadron that I joined there had jets.
Had jets?
Yeah.
And they must have been the F-86 or something.
No, it was a F2 by,
Oh. And it was also a photo squadron, so you were there for aerial mapping. And
yes.
You weren't armed. You didn't have armor on.
No, no guns, no armor, no nothing.
Oh, okay.
But about the second day in Korea, word came down that one of the fighter bomber squadrons, 323 exactly, had lost a few men that week and needed some replacements. So they asked for volunteers, and a buddy and I volunteered, and we were back in Corsairs again with VMSB 323.
VMSB V-23.
Yeah.
323.
Yeah.
Well, isn't this something now? But now, where were you based there? What kind of an airstrip did you have on that?
Well, I started out at Pusan, which was K1. The bases in Korea were all Ks. K1, 2, 3, and all up the line.
And they were just assigned numbers, like K1 would be a, okay.
And these were all Martian matting fields.
Oh, they were.
Steel.
They were just that military steel corrugation that they set out on the field.
Coral, and then mat.
Mat
on top of them. Yeah.
Oh. How long of strips were you operating here?
Oh, pretty long flights. We went from Pusan up to the Yalu, which was the full length of Korea.
Yeah.
To do our bombing. And many of those were 4 hour, a little more 4 hour flights.
4 hours.
Mm-hmm. But after about a month, we moved up to the East Coast, K-18.
Oh, I see. Numbers starting south and the higher numbers.
Well, I guess I could figure out how the numbers ran, but essentially they were greater as you went up. But but yet later on there were some of the newer ones ended up as K6, which didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So were you were you carrying bombs now, or were you carrying carrying bombs?
Bombs and rockets, the whole 9 yards.
And rockets.
And
Oh, gosh, well, tell me about what kind of targets were you after?
This was all close air support most of it for the Marines, although we did provide support for the Army as well, but primarily we were supporting the Marine Division.
So you did a lot of ground front line strafing roads and things of that nature, and bombing and ground support. Yeah. Very interesting. Well, how about air problems? Did you have any?
No. There were, on 2 occasions, the MiGs made a run on us, but we were going so slow compared to what they were doing, they could never get the guns to bear.
That's interesting.
And they didn't, like most jets, they didn't like to come down low because they used too much fuel. And the jets in those days were very hoggish on fuel.
You bet.
So there was no problem with air-to-air fighting for us. The Air Force was fighting the MiGs every day. We'd see them go up. And about 20 minutes later, an hour later, we'd see them coming back. And we're only about halfway to the target.
I see, yeah. What a difference a day makes here. This is something now. How many in your squadron there? Like 20 aircraft or?
No, we had probably closer to 18.
18?
Yeah.
And did you go out as a full 18 aircraft?
Oh, no, we went out in 4s, sometimes 8. On some occasion, we'd go out as 12 airplanes, but normally it would be about 4. Because we were scattered all over the peninsula there.
Well,
and we had close air support. Of course, the forward air controllers would control us.
Show you where to drop your bombs and stuff.
Otherwise, we could pick many of them. We could pick out on our own, but those that were particularly close to the friendly troops.
Yeah, you had to have some markers. You bet they'd throw some smoke for you or something.
And it worked out very well. There was very few problems of any kind.
Were these forward controllers aircraft of your unit or something, or were they ground personnel?
As a matter of fact, we had a Marine on the ground as a forward air controller. But the Air Force had people flying SNJs, strangely enough, who were spotting targets. And they would spot a target and try to mark it with a small smoke rocket. And then we would go on in, as soon as we located it and verified that that was in fact the target, then we would go on in and unload the ordnance on it. And those people in those SNJs did a wonderful job. And that was not easy, and they lost quite a number of them.
I can imagine they'd be susceptible to ground fire.
Definitely, more so than we were.
What operational altitude were you operating in? What were you going in mostly at?
Oh, we would, if we were on a long hop going up somewhere along the Yalu or something like that, we'd be as high as 16, 17,000 feet.
Oh.
Because they did have 88s and whatnot.
Yeah, they could punch up to you. So did you run into anti-aircraft fire?
Yeah, practically every time.
Oh,
but it wasn't too accurate, and they didn't have enough of it to really bother us. Now, the lower stuff, they were well supplied with. Most of it was all Russian guns. And they knew how to use them. And we got hit quite frequently in support low.
I read an article on your Corsair flying that you had a lot of trouble with your ailerons and rudders. Some of it,
they did
getting damaged.
Yeah, they knocked 2 complete ailerons off one time, and damaged a couple more, but they always left one aileron for me, and that was all I needed.
Get this thing back with half your flight controls. Now, were you getting that from shrapnel or from small arm fire?
That was mostly small arm fire.
And that's when you were going in and strafing these front lines.
But it made surprising little problem.
And the power of that old Pratt & Whitney engine. And
well, you could depend on that thing,
Yeah,
and as long as you had that, and even when that was damaged, you still had a very good chance of getting back.
Fantastic.
It was a good feeling. Far more confident than if that had been a inline engine, liquid cooled.
Liquid cooled. Take small arm fire, you'd have a leak, and then you'd really have to cut up. So, how many missions were you in Korea?
I flew 153 all.
And did you ever have to bail out of any of these things?
No. I almost, I got hit and lost all my hydraulic systems one afternoon, but no problem with the plane flying. Until I found that I also didn't have any landing gear. Of course, the landing gear was hydraulic, and we had a manual system as a backup if your hydraulics were shot out. But that was also empty. And as a final thing, we had a CO2 bottle that was down between our legs. As a last resort, you could pop that big, heavy bottle and blow the gear down. Unfortunately, I tried, and the bottle was empty. So. And I had a hung-up bomb and a hung-up belly tank that I couldn't get rid of. And I was getting low on gas, and it was getting late. And they suggested that with that hung up bomb and whatnot, I go out and bail out over the ocean, and they'd send out a rescue vessel to pick me up. And I wasn't too enthused by the, but I said, okay, I'll try it. And I went out, and unfortunately, I undid my shoulder straps, and thinking I was going to go out. But at the last moment, I looked down, and it was getting dark, and that water didn't look too comforting at all. And I said, no, I'm coming in. So I turned around and landed. Just as I landed, the engine stopped. I was out of gas completely, but I was on the final, no problem.
Oh.
And I made a beautiful landing, one of my better ones, on the bomb and on the belly tank. Slid to a stop in a big cloud of dust, and climbed out, and didn't have a stretch.
So you had a live bomb hanging on, and
that's not as dangerous as it sounds.
It wasn't armed because it hasn't been released to turn up.
But it could have burned. It would have been what they call a low order explosion if it had gone off. But it could, in other cases, blown up.
Oh yeah. I think you're a very lucky person.
Well, the only thing that worried me, I couldn't get my shoulder straps tightened again. I had too much gear on, and I was too busy.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm liable to put my face through that instrument panel, but I didn't. As I said, I rode in on that bomb and
slid right down. And you actually got back to a landing air base, and you
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
land out in
yeah,
the field
yeah.
or anything, huh?
Yeah, went back home.
Oh, for crying out loud.
But that wasn't anything.
Yeah?
No.
I did. No bad dreams? You went out and
Oh,
had a couple
no,
drinks
never,
or anything?
nothing.
Just
No.
part of the job? You went and
No.
got another airplane and went back to
I was
work?
supposed to get a
Couple shots?
Yeah, but I didn't. I had the meat wagon out there and the doctor, and he handed the brandy to my buddy, and he drank it.
Isn't that interesting?
I never did get one of those medicinal brandies.
Oh,
Somebody had an awful lot of those to drink, but
you didn't get involved?
No.
That's amazing. Now, let's see, you came in as a second lieutenant, I assume, as you graduating in,
well, in Korea I was a captain.
and then you moved to captain up
then
through your rank.
Then I made major.
Major.
Yeah.
Outstanding. And you did that during Korea? During
yeah,
there or after you got home?
Well, just about the time I landed back home.
I see. So if you're moving up in rank, then you're getting a higher assignments in position, like your squadron leaders and your
Well, I was leading, no, not a squadron leader, but I was a flight leader for most of the time. I was
Flight
in
leader?
Korea, yeah.
and then you'd have how many aircraft with you on a flight?
Oh, sometimes just 4, sometimes 8.
So, I'll be darned. So you'd have your assigned targets, and then you'd be flight leader, and
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
work as a team, and you all knew what you had to
It
do.
was very smooth and easy. There was no great sweat or anything on it. Worked out very
God, you had a
fine.
great
Yeah.
esprit de corps.
Then I got a few R&Rs in Japan, which were kind of nice to get a
Sure.
break like that once in a while. But
That's neat.
it,
But they have a little C-47 or something that shuttle you back to Tokyo,
Yeah.
back and forth with?
yeah.
And you stay over there a week? They usually give you a week or so?
Yeah, just about 5 days, I think. Yeah.
That's neat.
Which was a nice break, no question.
So they finally got a peace agreement in Korea, and so the line of
Well, that happened long after.
way after you were
left.
gone in there.
Yeah.
That was a terrible thing when they had to go up to the China really invaded, came back down.
Well, yeah, that's. I don't know.
They got so much.
I didn't agree with MacArthur, and most Marines never did agree with him. But, he was all for dropping the nukes and
He
everything
was
else.
going to nuke them, yeah.
That would have never worked.
That wasn't the idea of
No,
the way you wanted to
no,
have
no.
it settled. Well, very interesting. So now you're back home as a major, and you've got how many years in service now?
I don't remember what it was now. Maybe.
It's probably 1955 or
Yeah.
so when you came back, and started in 42, and that's 13 years.
Yeah, something like that, I guess it was, yeah. And I got out of the Marine Corps then and went back to work with Shell Oil.
Went back to Shell.
Yeah.
And did you stay in the reserve?
Yes, I did.
Okay, my gosh, that's a lot of fellas,
But-
thought they'd had enough of that stuff being called to the military.
Well, that didn't bother me. In fact, it was hard to get back to normal after the Korean show.
Yeah.
The job seemed awfully dull after what I had been doing in Korea.
You can imagine.
I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stick with that or not. And about 6 months, I was back working over about 6 months, and I got a telegram from the commandant offering me a regular commission if I wanted it.
Regular Marine, yeah.
So I talked it over with my wife, and she said, whatever you want to do. And so I did.
Isn't
And
that
I
neat?
went back in as a regular then, and eventually retired from the Marine Corps in 1964. And that-
1964?
Yeah, 64.
64. Well, when you were taken as a regular, you were probably sent to Marine headquarters somewhere. Now you're a major and you're going to lieutenant colonel.
I did have, I went to Quantico.
Quantico, Virginia, that's a big
and
headquarters.
then to any number of schools and courses and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually retired from Quantico again.
Very interesting.
Well, it was interesting. I enjoyed it the most part.
What would you call yourself, a civilian soldier, or would you call yourself a regular Marine?
No, I was more a civilian soldier.
You were more
Yeah.
reserves time, and then
I always felt that one of the best ideas was the reserve training. And in fact, during that Korean War, that was, you know, almost 100% reserves.
Called
Both the
active
Army and the Marine, particularly the Marines.
Mm-hmm. So the reserve program that was a pretty sound program.
Paid off. Very
And it
much
paid
so.
off, and it had qualified personnel to do the job when
Yep.
they were called.
Yes.
Well, that's really neat, Jack.
It was.
1964. Boy, we're 36 years later now.
Tell me about it.